Hey, what's going on, everyone? I'm Vinny Costa, editor of Street Muscle Magazine and your host of the RodCAST, brought to you by Lucas Oil. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, Greg Costa, editor of Engine Labs and the all-around tech guru. What's up, Greg?
Hey, Vinny, how you doing?
Good, man. Good. It's always a good day when we get to record the RodCAST. And today is a special episode because we haven't done one like this in a long time. We're going to recap some of the recent projects that we've been working on. We're going to talk about some future plans, things like that. So we're going to do what we do all the time, basically, and talk about what's going on editorially. But first, before we get into that, Greg, I'd like to ask our audience, if you've ever cut yourself on a zip tie, hit that like, comment, and subscribe button for us, please, because isn't that the worst?
And if it was your own fault, I have no sympathy for you. If you do not own a set of flush cutting zip tie cutters, you're the problem.
Yeah, if you are the person that I bought all of my used cars from, who cut their zip ties at a sharp angle, I hope you walk into a door.
I hope you step on a Lego barefoot.
Yeah, yeah. No, but seriously, we've all been there before, and if you're one of us, help us out and hit that like, comment, and subscribe button. Now that we've got that out of the way, Greg, I say we jump right into it. And before we can do that, we got to take a word from our sponsors.
At Silver Sport Transmissions, we believe classic cars and trucks look their best on the open road, and four-wheel drives belong on the trail. We continue to innovate and develop the best overdrive transmission packages for muscle cars, street rods, classic trucks, and four-wheel drive vehicles. Our commitment to customer service and integrity is second to none. When the wrenches begin to turn, Silver Sport Transmissions is there. Hit the trail with Silver Sport Transmissions.
We're back. Greg, like I said, I think we should just jump right into it. But I want to give you the floor first to talk about some of your projects because they've been ongoing and you've made some serious progress as of late. When someone asks you about the projects on Engine Labs, what's the first one that comes to mind?
Obviously, LS 5.0.
LS 5.0. That's the one, man.
Yeah, that's the one I'm super excited about. Actually, I even have a hat that says LSX on it, so, because can't wear a Mustang hat when you're working on an LS engine. I think just like things that's cancel true. Out and you start losing 10 millimeters and, the animals freak out.
I didn't notice that on that video that you published, but that's true. You were wearing an LS6 hat. That's funny.
So, yeah, that thing's, slowly but surely coming along. Just like everybody else is experiencing, we have parts delays and supply issues. And
as a kind of like reminder for everyone at home, can you give them like the backstory on that project? Like, what was the impetus for just even coming up with it? What was, because I mean, you've been talking about doing this for a long time.
Yeah. Well, the very original, the very first LS versus Coyote shootout, I guess, that we did was it was like a budget shootout, and it was 10 grand budget. Well, $999 or $9,999, four nines. It was stock displacement, an LS3 versus a Gen 1 at the time Coyote. Basically, they built the LS. Actually, wait a minute. Did they do? I think they did. Yeah, they put a big stroke in it. All aftermarket parts. I mean, basically, we walked away with no.
Was it a 6.2?
It was a 6.2.
Okay.
And I think they dropped a stroker crank in it. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Really?
I think so. I don't remember like exactly, but all I remember about that whole thing was that nobody in the comments was happy.
Okay, I'll let you continue.
Yeah, the Ford guys complained about the displacement. The LS guys complained the budget was spent wrong. I hate to sound like I'm trying to distance myself, but I had nothing to do with that. I came in after all that. But yeah, it was just.
Yeah, that's the first thing, that I think anybody would, criticize that on, right? Like, well, hold on, that's not apples to apples. You have a 6.2 liter versus a 5.0, and you put a stroker kit in it. Like, okay, now we're, I don't even know what would they stroke the 6.2 to? It would be like a 6.8 or something.
I mean, they could have put a 3750 crank in it. They could have put a 4-inch crank. I really don't remember how many cubes it had. It might have actually just been stock displacement, but even then, we're still talking 6.2 versus 5.0, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think they may have done the crazy displacement in the second one, but anyway, so I mean, nobody was happy with how the money came out, and at the end of the day, the budget was ridiculous. Like, the Coyote at the time was still ridiculously expensive for parts. The LS, they could have got away with half that budget, right?
Yeah,
because I think they ended up making like 560 horsepower or something out of it.
Yeah, when you told me that, I was like, that's not impressive at all for that much money.
Like it was a real weird deal. Like it seemed like it was a little, I don't know. It was weird. So I obviously wanted to do, let's go 5.0 for 5.0. And right out of the gate, everybody's like, you're insane. No one would ever build a 5-liter LS. And I was like, well, yes, I am insane, and I'll build it. So I did some research, and of course, we could have done the old DZ302 and done a 4-inch bore with a 3-inch stroke. But at that point, we're doing, custom crank, aftermarket block, all this stuff. So I was like, well, how do we do this? And I started running the numbers, and I realized that if we just did a slight overbore, so, under an LS1 bore, which is plenty attainable with a 4.8 block, and use the 4.8 crank, we'd get 5 liters. All right. And then I was like, well,
one more time, Greg. If you use the 4.8 crank with the what?
It's a 3.858 bore. So okay. the stock 4.8 crank the stock 4.8 and 5.3 bore is 3.760.
Gotcha.
So the stock LS1 bore is 3.898. And there are plenty of people that have taken a 5.3 block and opened it up to the 3.898. So going 3.858, no big deal. Like right. Plenty of meat. So by doing that, I then wanted to match, because I ran all this. I actually published an article where I used the DynoSim software from Comp to map this all out. Because I was like, this is crazy. I'm not just going to start an engine build, because I've got a hair. So all of a sudden I realized with some proper cam selection, I could not only match the displacement, I think, and I still, everybody kind of looks at me and they're like, well, you can, but why? Match the power band of the Coyote in that test.
Wow, okay.
That's peak power at 7,400 and ending the test at 8,000.
So would this be considered like a D-stroke on the LS 5.0?
No, because it's the stock stroke. It's the stock 4.8 stroke.
4.8 stroke. Okay.
Yeah. So it's and that's the thing. We're running a stock 4.8 crank, which should handle the naturally aspirated power and RPM no problem.
And you still think you can spin it to the same RPM that the Coyote gets?
Yep, I do.
Okay.
I do. So, and I think we can not only match the power band, but I think I can make more power than the Coyote. And come in under budget. I mean, obviously this build doesn't really have a budget, but yeah, with what I've spent out of my own pocket and the parts I've ordered,
okay.
I don't think the $10,000 is going to come anywhere near into play.
Walk us through that. So like, what have you had to do to get to where, you're going?
Well, first off, I took the block down to the machine shop and I went to Beck Racing Engines and I had them basically give it the complete race prep, right? That sounds intimidating, but he actually ended up mostly checking, not really altering much. I mean, he aligned board it to make sure, the mains were all in good and straight condition. Because keep in mind, we started with I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of mile core, an LY2 core, so a Gen 4 core, in, untouched condition as it got pulled. So I had them, they magnafluxed everything first and foremost, so we weren't working with a bad block. We didn't need to sonic check because we weren't going that crazy with the bore size. Align bored it, he bored it and honed it to final size. He checked all my lifter, size, concentricity, the lifter bores. Didn't have to touch any of them, thankfully. And then basically just went through the block and cleaned up the deck. I think we ended up taking 9 thou off the deck to clean it up. So nothing much. The block was in amazing condition. Like, for as rough as it looked on the outside, it was a solid foundation. So we basically went through and checked all the critical measurements and basically blueprinted the block, which I know a lot of people are like, blueprinting a block, why do you need to do that, especially in an LS? But we did. So that was the block, and then it was a matter of just picking out the right parts.
How did you go about are you using custom stuff or off-the-shelf parts? Because this is kind of like a weird build.
Well, the only thing custom is going to be the piston, and that's because of the bore size.
Right.
We're going a little. When I talked to Diamond, I kind of laid out my intent, right? I was like, look, I don't want to go super exotic. I don't want to end up with a $2,300 set of pistons here. Like this, I have the budget to do it. I don't want to, because that's not attainable. So once we ran all the numbers, we just had to make a couple of tweaks. And so we ordered, custom pistons, because number one, I needed to get to the compression I wanted, which is 11-1, because that's what they ran in the the comparison, because the Coyote's 11-1. So they upped the LS to 11-1. So I'm going to go 11-1. Still completely, 91 octane friendly. So we did mess with the ring pack a little bit. But again, it's nothing crazy. And literally when I did this, I went to Total Seal and I said, hey, I want the best performing, but not budget unfriendly, like not exotic. I want something that it doesn't carry a huge price tag. Okay. What are we looking at? And so we made a couple considerations there. Because like talking to Ben at EFIU, he's like, we can run 0.7 millimeter ring pack. He's like, you're going to be looking at a lot of money for rings, but we can run them and you're going to be plenty good on them. I couldn't do that. Like, that's not in the spirit of this build.
Right.
So we ended up with a 1 millimeter top ring, a 1.2 millimeter second ring, and then a 3 millimeter oil ring. We were able to fit a nice fat oil control ring group in the piston.
Custom bore, custom piston, stock rod, stock crank.
No, it'll be a Manley 6300 rod, which is an off-the-shelf size.
Okay. So
because the 4.8 comes factory with a 6.275 rod. Instead of the 6096, the standard ones, because of the shorter stroke. So to add that, plus quarter or plus 0.25, which is, what the 6.125 rod is, we went to the 6.300 rod. So it still gave very similar compression height. And it's all this stuff is just kind of lining up, and it's really not that exotic.
Stock cylinder heads.
So we went with the LY2 core because they came with the 799 castings that we then sent to Lingenfelter.
Okay.
Because we originally we thought we could run stock heads, like unported.
With your budget, you kind of splurged when you sent those over to Lingenfelter. No,
not that bad. You'd be surprised. Their package, which is the full tilt package. So the CNC porting, the bigger valves, the upgraded valve springs, the titanium locks and retainers, all that stuff comes out to like $1,800.
Wow. Okay. For some reason I thought it was way more than that. That's not bad at all.
No. Yeah. So it's still extremely attainable. And originally we were gonna try to run this whole thing on stock heads. But we put it on the flow bench at EFI University, and the numbers weren't what the internet says stock 799 heads flow.
Did you drive the heads over to EFIU or did you ship them?
Yeah, no, I drove them over. It's a 3-hour drive, it's just went over and we played with it. We actually found some really cool little short turn radius issues and we were playing on his machines. That's what we were doing. But
so yeah, the short turn radius issues that you're talking about, the CNC boarding took care of all that, right?
It should. I don't have the heads back yet.
Okay.
But it should. Lingenfelter has been developing. I mean, they don't create a port and then just stop. They've been refining these ports, because the funny thing is when I talk to them, they're like, oh yeah, we were just working on 799s. And I'm like, but you've sold 799 ports forever. And they're like, yeah, well, we don't just sit and say that's good enough.
Yeah, that's honestly the hallmark of a manufacturer that cares. The crazy thing is, when you look at like a cross section of a cylinder head that like an aftermarket cylinder head versus a factory cylinder head that's been ported to get rid of those deficiencies that you're talking about, it's crazy. Like the wall thickness that you lose, or by porting those, like it gets really thin right underneath the like the pedestal for the rockers and the springs. And so I was surprised when you were going to retain the factory cylinder heads, but when you talk about the cost comparison, I mean, geez, $1,800, you can't beat that.
Yeah, and these things should flow plenty of power. The heads will not be a restriction.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're not doing anything crazy for camshaft.
Right.
We're gonna stay under the traditional, the valve spring kit we're going with is good to 660 left.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody who knows LSs knows that's not a massive cam. In the Ford world, that's a pretty big cam, but in the LS world, that's not enormous. It's big, yeah, but definitely still streetable.
What kind of lobe separation angle?
We haven't spec'd it out yet. And that's the thing. We're gonna. I don't know how we're gonna do this. I don't know if we're going to do an off-the-shelf cam and then spec something out to compare it to, or just go with a custom cam out of the gate, because Comp actually has a grind that I think will work. Ben thinks might work.
Grind for everything, dude.
Yeah, I mean, they have an off-the-shelf grind, and the thing is, depending on how much power it is, do you really want to go through ordering a custom cam when there's something that's 95% of the way there off the shelf that'll be to your door in 3 days?
Especially when you start figuring in, that budget that you're talking about.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the things where we really have to sit down, like with Comp and Ben, and really have that discussion, because it's real easy to get lost in the magazine thing where everything's custom, everything's exactly to your specs. That's not what this is about.
Well, there's building something to full tilt, right? Like, let's see what we can do, the capabilities, and then there's realistically what could the average person do, you know what I mean, or what would the average person do, and
yeah. And this is something that at the end of the day anybody should be able to recreate, but a lot of people are going to go, why? Right? Why would you take cubes away from your LS?
That's what I was going to ask you. If you were to, if you envisioned like a car for this engine to go into, what kind of car would that be?
Oh God, I've had so many ideas run through my head. We thought about putting it in the black Mustang. There's a couple people at the office, as you well know, who have encouraged such debauchery. At the end of the day, I don't think I can do that. I really don't.
Well, you have a 351 in there right now, right?
No, it's right now it's the stock 302, and I'm building a new engine for it.
That's right.
That's another one of our engine projects.
Yeah.
But it's Ford. It's got a blue oval on the valve cover. So
there you go.
So realistically, I mean,
like the capabilities of the engine, right? What it's built for. What do you envision it going into? What kind of a car? Not a car specifically, you know what I mean?
I mean, realistically, I could see it in like an S chassis, a Nissan S chassis, a BMW, like an older BMW.
So a drift car,
road race car, just light, nimble, rear wheel drive. just something that, would tear up a road course or drift course. I can't drift. I'm not going to even pretend like I can.
Anybody can do it with a handbrake, dude. We'll figure it out.
But I mean, just something light and nimble, I guess, would be the right chassis for it. The problem is I don't have room for another car.
240s aren't that big, dude.
Yeah, well, I do have an Explorer that can get sold and moved out. So I've got a space. I just have to find the right chassis, like the right car, the right deal. I mean, I was even considering, a third gen Camaro until I saw the prices.
Dude, I swear, I was just about to say an IROC Camaro would be very cool for that engine.
Yeah,
the original 5.0, the 305, right?
Yeah, I mean, the whole 302 thing with, Trans Am and all that, like.
Yeah, that would be killer, dude.
But I just.
In California, a nice white one for $1,000 right now. I'll send you the link.
Thanks. Thanks.
I know.
Not like I got a ton of stuff to do to the Black Mustang right now, but okay.
Right. You're never supposed to finish projects. You just get more.
Yeah, true.
As long as one runs at any particular time, and that's the best we can hope for.
Says the guy that at what you peak, you were at 7?
Yeah, but not all of them were running. So,
Was there ever a point where they all ran?
I think so. But not for long. You always mess with them, you tear into them. Speaking of the latest one that we worked on was the Daily Camaro, as you know. And that one has been a very fun project. We still got a few more things that we want to do to it, but for viewers and listeners at home, the Daily Camaro started life as a 2010 Camaro SS RS. Street Muscle transitioned from being a classic only magazine title to incorporating late model muscle cars and even older traditional hot rods. So really runs the gamut. And so I thought it would be a good idea for us to incorporate some late model muscle. That way we can get those fans reading the title more. And so we picked up the 2010 Camaro, and it was bone stock LS3 manual 6-speed. But it was a well-optioned car for its time, but it had extremely high mileage, like 180 or 170,000 miles on the chassis, supposedly a lot less on the motor. We baseline dynoed it, and it made 376 or 377 to the wheel here at our dyno in San Diego. And that was respectable. So it honestly indicated to me that, yeah, maybe it is a lower mileage engine. Either that or it's just, a testament to the LS. But yeah, so I started out making about a 1 horsepower per cube, which was nice. But it wasn't going to stay stock for long, and we knew that. So we started on with a host of bolt-on parts from one of our partners, Flowmaster. We did a full catback exhaust, some shorty headers, and we did some MSD ignition components, and that was about it for a little while. Then we did a Diablo Sport tune on it for 87 octane, so the crappy gas that we have out here in California.
You were carb legal through all this, right?
That's right. Thank you, Greg. That was a big point of that project, right? So since we're in California, we wanted to build a car that was entirely carb legal, totally past emissions. Each part that we got for the car came with a sticker that said, hey, this is, California legal, 50 state legal. And so it was a little bit difficult kind of sourcing parts, but we did have partners that had stuff, right? And we knew that we wanted to go forced induction. So after doing the initial round of bolt-ons and the Diablo Sport tune, we dynoed it again, and it made just shy of 390 horsepower to the wheel. I believe it was 387, 388. But where it really gained was in the torque. It picked up like 18 pounds, right? And I think we started. I don't even want to try and take a stab at it because I really don't remember. But I remember it picked up like 18 or 19. So that was good because that LS3 you really got to wind it out to feel that torque. So that brings us to our latest project with that particular build, and we took it down to Fresno, drove it down to Fresno, and met up with our friends at Whipple. If you guys are longtime fans of the RodCAST, you'll remember when we interviewed Dustin Whipple. He runs things over there. Whipple superchargers have been around since late 70s, early 80s. They were big pioneers in the twin screw supercharger game. And they're still doing the thing, right? And the fact that they're still owned and operated here in Fresno, California is just a testament to the hard work that those guys put in. Greg, when I went down there, it was crazy because, they take apart the Camaro, they take the intake manifold off and all that stuff. And they start putting, we use their Gen 4 kit because their Gen 5 kit is still in development for the LS and LT platform. They already have the Gen 5 kit available for purchase for late model Hemi and late model Ford. So for you guys out there who want one for your Mustang or your Challenger Charger, what have you, they already have the newest kit. Those are awesome. They're incredible. In fact, they're working on some new tech for those that I can't really talk about, but just know that it's awesome. But the point that I'm making here, Greg, is they're installing the Gen 4 kit. It's a 2.9 liter, supercharger. And as they're doing that, Dustin and his team of engineers are still finding ways to improve a design that's on its way out, and they're bringing a new design in. And so they're making notes, they're test fitting the new design, the Gen 5, they're seeing where they can, fit things and how they can improve upon their current design. And they're also improving upon their old design at the same time. Like, oh, well, why did we mount this bracket back here? Hold on, let us run it over to our fab shop real quick, make an alteration, and we can put it in a better location. And I just thought that was really cool. Just the fact that they're willing to, put that much thought and effort into their designs. It's, I don't know if a lot of companies do that. They come up with a product, it's done, it sells good, and that's it.
Yeah, the constant refinement. I mean, that's the mark of a perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
Good enough isn't.
Yeah, exactly. I was so impressed by that, man. And I wouldn't exactly call it a mantra, but it seemed to me to be a guiding light for them. And that was, Whipple is a company that does not make compromises on their design based on design constraints from the factory, right? So if your hood is too low, or your firewall is doesn't give you enough clearance, Whipple's not going to make their supercharger smaller to accommodate that. They're going to find creative ways to get around that. And so such as the challenge with the late model Camaro, that's why they're still tooling with the Gen 5 for the LS and the LT platform, because they're finding a way to make that work. And it's, they're selling their supercharger kits like freaking hotcakes. Mm-hmm. If they wanted to, they could rush something to market and they could sell. They would fly off the shelves. I saw it with my own eyes, man. They're cranking out orders like crazy, but they're not willing to do that because why cheapen a product that's tried and true just to, make a few bucks right now? Yeah, they are dominant.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the project we did with Ivan's Coyote, I mean, the amount of power we made at the boost level we made is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, just, we when he ran the conservative numbers, because we didn't want anybody to question that, is that a happy dyno? It made like 1,039 at 20 psi. Good to the wheels. Like, And if you did, apply the correction factor to it, that number got even bigger. But we didn't want to publish that number because Ivan didn't want anybody to question that it actually made that power.
That's just gotta sound hellacious in person, man. Because I know what that LS sounded like when he was spinning it up, and we only took it to 6,500 RPM. And
it cut out the mic of the camera he was using. Like it was like the audio was trash just because it was blown out.
Yeah, and what that thing's red lines at like 7,500 RPM, 8,000.
I think we actually spun his to 78.
Good Lord,
if I remember right. Yeah,
those coyotes, man. Yeah, so that's the other thing I was truly impressed by. Not only just their manufacturing practices, they're using the most state-of-the-art equipment. It's incredible. And then, just to see and know that they're a company that, Dustin told me, there have been many large companies that have attempted to purchase the company, right? And he explained to me that they don't want the soul of the company to die, by being sold to a large conglomerate. And you really feel that when you go there, man. They are steeped in their community. They employ a lot of people right there in Fresno, and it's still like a mom and pop family organization, but they are one of the powerhouses in our industry as far as power adders are concerned.
Yeah, and not to say anything like negative about Fresno, but you don't stay in Fresno for 50 years unless you believe in Fresno. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there are far more friendly, manufacturing cities throughout the United States that would love to throw money at a company the size of Whipple, right? Just to, come here, not pay taxes for 10 years. I'm sure they would, but he has stayed not only in California, but in the same town he started in.
Yeah, and he did explain that to me, that they do make some compromises, and so does the city. They work together. They've all obviously run into some challenges just being a California-based company. But I think also too that the community knows, like, hey, we want these guys around. We don't want them to leave. They're a major manufacturing business here, and they create jobs. Stay here in Fresno. So I really liked that. It's a real Americanist success story. Dustin's grandfather, his father, and now they run the business. Obviously, the supercharging business started with his father, but those were some of the things that I was really impressed by. And then also the power, right? So we're talking about not even like, you could say it's a full bolt-on car, right? Then you add a supercharger and the can tune that it comes with. And this was on the high end, at the top of the RPM range, it was making 9 pounds of boost. Just shy of 630 horsepower to the wheel. It was 628 and some change, and this was in 109-degree weather. I forgot the atmospheric pressure and all that stuff, but it was not in our favor at all. There was a lot left on the table if we would have done this in February, so I was blown away, man. It was crazy, and I think we made 650 foot-pounds or something like that. But dude, it's an entirely different animal. There's torque and horsepower throughout the entire rev range. Whereas before, you really only felt it, from 4,500 to 6,000 RPM. And now, you lay into it at 2,500 and it's there. It's an incredibly fun car to drive. And yeah, if you're thinking about pulling the trigger on a blower, consider Whipple.
Yeah, especially that positive displacement kicking the ass throughout the range. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, boost, there it is.
Yeah, so explain, because I have a very layman understanding of the difference between a positive displacement blower and others that are on the market. So can you kind of break that down for our viewers at home, Greg?
Yeah, so positive displacement blower, whether it's a root style or a twin screw, the roots actually slings it around, whereas the twin screw just pushes it down, right? It displaces X amount of air per revolution, right? So at 1800 RPM, let's say, it's every time it revolves, it's moving 2.9 liters of air. So as soon as you hit the gas and you are, wide open throttle, you are getting all the boost because it's making all the boost. Whereas like a centrifugal or a turbo, the speed of the compressor is what dictates the pressure it's creating.
Right.
So, I mean, yes, there's a slight increase in boost pressure as it, as you accelerate in a positive displacement, but we're talking maybe 6 to 9 psi, right? We're not talking 0 to 9 throughout the rev range,
Right.
because it's not dependent on the rotor speed to make the boost. It's because as the rotors spin up, the engine is ingesting more air, so
Right.
that it's kind of normalized, versus the centrifugal or a turbo. The faster that compressor spins, the more boost it makes because it's moving more air.
Right.
And in the case of a turbo, it's not super dependent on the engine speed, because in theory you could make more boost without increasing the RPM. But that's a whole tech article in and of itself. And the centrifugal is obviously dependent on engine speed because it's directly tied to the engine. But yeah, so the positive displacement, it's got all the oomph and the guts right there all the time.
Right.
Like,
And
wherever you are, there's your boost.
That's always been the calling card of a like a roots blower, right? Like as opposed to a turbo that has to spool up. Yeah,
like the I don't want to say a roots, because this isn't a roots, this is but a positive displacement, right? As soon as you touch the gas, the power is there. Yeah. It's not, there's no waiting, there's no building boost, there's no, it's just like, it's
that's not the case for a centrifugal blower then, even though they're both belt driven.
Well, because a centrifugal blower, like at 1800 RPM, the blower may be spinning at 8,000 RPM, right? Because keep in mind that there's a step-up ratio, right? So it's spinning at 8,000 RPM. At 8,000 RPM, it's producing 150 CFM. So that may equate to not even a pound of boost at 1,800 RPM.
Okay.
So as the engine speeds up, that impeller spins up, so that at peak it's spinning at 72,000 RPM, and now it's moving 800 CFM, and I'm just pulling numbers out, which is making 13 pounds of boost.
Gotcha.
But it needs that engine speed to make that boost, whereas the positive displacement does not need engine speed to make the boost,
because it's constant.
It's making the boost.
Yeah.
The more boost it makes, the more the engine breathes it in.
The only way you adjust that is by putting a different pulley on there, right?
Yeah. And then so if you put a different pulley on it, the lobes are spinning faster, so you're pushing more air in, so you get more boost, because boost is just a measure of restriction. And it basically changes the ratio of how fast the blower is spinning versus the engine. And the ratios are totally different, because I think I don't know, and Dustin, if you're watching, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna try to even pretend to know what the max RPM of one of yours is, but it would be in like the 18 to 20,000 RPM range. So that's maybe like a 2 to 1, 2.5 to 1. Whereas like say a Pro Charger might be 72,000 RPM max RPM.
Okay.
So now we're talking 72,000 at 6,500. So you see the giant disparity in boost versus RPM.
Does that mean that we also see a disparity in terms of durability?
No, because they're built to handle that kind of engine speed. I mean, think about it. Turbos, and really a centrifugal supercharger is the compressor housing of a turbo. That's really dumbed down, but yeah, belt driven. And turbos can spin well over 100,000 RPM and live. Like the bearings are there, the technology's there to live there. it's a different type of load and engineering done to the rotor set, well, to the impeller and compressor.
I got to tell you, man, it was very impressive to be there and just be a part of all that. And the fact that like I was able to hop in the car as soon as we were done on, I think we finished on Thursday, and drive it 5 hours back to San Diego, not a care in the world. You know, I was monitoring all the vitals of the car.
Well, I know there was at least one care, and that was looking out for CHP, but
Yeah. You know, but no, that's probably the most impressive thing, is that you can drive that thing every day. It's still the daily Camaro. You know, and in stoplight to stoplight traffic, it's really mild mannered. You kind of forget that the blower's there until you want to remember that it's there, you know, and you tap the throttle and say, oh yeah, I forgot. So it's cool. It's, like I said, mild mannered when you want it to be, but it's there to have a lot of fun when you want to pass someone on the highway or take it to the drag strip or do whatever you want, really.
So now is the goal for the project still 500,000 miles?
Well, yeah, I mean, if it'll do it, for sure, you know, we're going to find the limit, right? I mean, I don't know how long you can go, you know, with a blower before you have to rebuild, but
I mean, anything that, honestly, I feel like anything that would have failed should have failed by now.
Yeah, knock on fuck.
So at this point, it's just,
Yeah.
I mean, wear and tear, just normal maintenance issues. I don't think the blower is necessarily going to, you know, add to anything. I mean, if you can keep your foot out of it.
Well, yeah, you know, it gets driven, and it's not really a car that gets abused. It's not something that I think on the bucket list for that car is to take it to, you know, Willow Springs, do a track day, see how it does, have some fun with it. But it's not a race car, and it was never meant to be. You know, it's a fun daily driver that makes a lot of horsepower and is cool. You know, I mean, you have you know, Hellcats running around that are making, you know, 700 horsepower, and that's not to the wheel. So I think it's comparable. You know, so the whole idea was to get a car that's accessible to maybe, you know, kid in his, you know, early 20s, has his first job, can go finance a car at a reasonable rate. You know, a 2010 Camaro still, there's a lot of them still out there. You can have them for a good price. You know, you're not into it for a crazy payment every month. But can you still, you know, build a car that's capable to hang with the modern performance cars like a Hellcat or a GT500 or, you know, whatever, as far as power is concerned. And I think we've proved that.
Well, I mean, I think what says it the best is, as soon as, you know, we all started talking after you got back from that, the constant theme was ZL1 what?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I mean, you look at a ZL1 from 2010, you're blowing the power numbers out of the water. You're hanging, I mean, with the power of a new ZL1. Actually, you're surpassing it, because their numbers, their 650 is at the crank, and you're putting 630 to the wheels.
Yep.
So, I mean, as far as the power, sure, you know, in 11 years, a 2021 ZL1 is going to have a lot more refinement inside, right? That's how the world works. But ZL1 what?
Yeah.
I just,
you know, not a fraction, maybe half the price. You know.
No, you're a fraction.
Yeah.
I mean,
let's say a third of the price.
Yeah. I mean, a third is a fraction.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, one is a fraction, but
yeah, like for a third of the price, you have, you know, comparable performance as out of the drivetrain. Yeah, handling stuff, you know, that's a different question. But the Zeta chassis was proven, man. It was an amazing platform to build on. The car still handles great. It's, you know, so I think we proved what we set out to prove, and that's that you can build something that's capable of hanging with modern performance cars for, you know, a fraction.
I mean, let's be honest. At a third of the price, you're not getting a third of the performance.
Mm-mm.
I mean, you're getting more power and more straight line performance and maybe fractionally, I gotta hate that we're using that word so much, but a fractionally diminished handling, and that's
let's say
just simply due to refinement.
Let's say you're getting overall 85% of the performance out of the car. Most people aren't good enough drivers to get 100% out of the modern car anyways. So I honestly, it's been a really fun project to work on. We still have some things in the works. We're going to do, because of the added power, we're going to do a clutch. We're going to do a rear diff. We're maybe going to do rear gears. We sourced some new gears for this thing, but they're 391s, which was like the common. That was the gear for the 1LE and I believe the Z28, right? So obviously those are both NA. They weren't, they didn't have a blower on them, and the ZL1 had different gears. So we might change those, do something different. And then we also have some really strong axles because that's been a known weak point of those cars. And then after that, man, we're just gonna drive it. Maybe you throw some sticky tires on it and take it to the track.
You need a little more meat under there.
Yeah, that's the other thing, right? So we got 275 square on that thing right now, and it's just not enough. So we'll probably try and go to a 305 or a 315 square setup if that's possible, which I think it is. And then, like I said, take it out to the track somewhere, probably Willow Springs. And that's been a fun one. So now that we've talked about that, what about the 351 that you've been working on, Greg?
Oh, it's going to be a 302. I'm just laden with 302s.
I thought it was a 351. Nope,
it's a 302. It's out of a 93 Thunderbird, and it's going to stay a 302. And we're gonna.
Did you originally have plans on building it into a 351? No.
Always going to stay a 302.
Okay.
Like, apparently I'm just weird and I want nothing but 5 liters. I don't know. But that one, there's a lot of plans, not a lot of movement because just parts have it tied up. I mean, there's a national bearing shortage. I mean, really? Yeah, like the coated bearings are just unobtainium right now.
Oh.
So, I mean, right now it's literally a pile of parts in the shop that I look at and I, go out there and wipe down with WD-40 and make sure nothing's rusting.
What does that do for the potential project that we have for Street Muscle? Will that affect us? Am I going to need those bearings?
I mean, I'm sure that Randy got, his Mopar bearings, no problem.
Okay.
So no, I think, I don't know if it's just a Ford part number that's having the issues, but I mean, when I went to source bearings, I mean, all the big houses were out. I mean, even the AutoZone and Kragen supply chains were out. Rock Auto didn't have them. I found a couple like real small speed shops that had them in stock, but their prices were through the roof because they knew they were the only ones that had them.
What's causing the shortage, man? Raw materials, I guess.
There's so many things that could be. I mean, they may not be able to get people to pack the boxes. They may not be able to get people to pull the orders. They may not,
shipping being held up in ports.
Yeah, it could be in the port. Cause I mean, let's think about it. Molly makes their stuff in Germany, right? Like a lot of stuff comes from Germany over there. Yeah. Like that still has to get into the US, right? Like there's so much just weirdness that nobody's thinking about. And it's a struggle. So, we're working with Molly and they're working with us and we're constantly going back and forth and talking about, updated timelines. But I mean, we can't, short of literally having people working, 20-hour shifts and putting on 8 different hats to go from everything from manufacturing to packaging, what are you going to do? So that one's just bound up in and plus, I mean, even once I get the bearings, I'm then in balancing jail because when I called the balancing shop, they were like, "Oh, you'll be lucky if we have it done in a month."
Wow. Okay.
And it's like, okay, because they're backed up beyond belief too. So
What was the purpose of this build, the 302 build?
Well, the 302 is going to be it's the retro 5.0. We're basically going to do all the stuff that we, that I say I was, 11 years old in the 90s. But all the stuff from the 90s, but with modern components, and basically do all the same tests and all the old school 5.0 stuff and see how much more power it makes now. And ultimately culminating in, every Fox body's dream and putting a blower on it. So, we're going to test a lot of new parts, and it started out as a dyno mule before I was like, well, I want to put that in the car. Like,
and that's what's ultimately going to go in the black car.
Yes. Yeah. The license plate on the car is 5L, so it's got to stay a 5-liter.
Okay. Very cool.
I say that, and the first time we talk about doing an aftermarket block, I don't know if I could actually have an aftermarket block and keep it 5-liter. That seems like sacrilege. I don't know.
Kind of a waste, a little bit.
But if we're cramming a ton of boost with what a modern blower can make, we may have to go to an aftermarket block, because the Ford 302 block is known to have, either accurately or not, that 500 power or 500 horsepower limit before it.
You could build a Coyote to replace it. You would still have a 5-liter.
But it's not retro. I want to do the old school. I want, swapping stuff is cool, but at the end of the day, I think in my black car, I want period correct, which is a 5-liter Windsor.
That's fair.
If I magically stumbled upon another, SN95, then I'll do stupid stuff to it. But I want one that's, relatively correct.
Well, swapping stuff is cool, dude.
Yeah, it is. I just don't want to do it to this one car that you know what I mean? It's like
there are other cars that you can do that with, for sure. Speaking of swaps, we've made some good progress on the LS swap that I've been working on with the C10 El Diablo. That's been a really fun project. You saw that one really kind of spool up quickly. Sort of. Once it got going, it spooled up pretty quickly. So
once it gained traction, it moved.
There you go.
Once it started moving, it moved.
Yeah. So for those of you who have been following our social media and some of our editorial on Street Muscle, you'll know about the C10 project that we've been working on. It's a 1984 C10 step side, little red pickup truck, very cool. Hence the nickname El Diablo. And we got it in a trade for a 71 El Camino that we had. And I picked that up, and it was
I thought you were insane when you started that, and I have to say my mind has changed. But I did. I thought you were insane when I
started what, the trade?
When you traded the El Camino for the C10.
I know.
I thought you were insane. And now like I said, my mind has changed. But
you questioned me when I did that. Because the El Camino was very cool. I bought it out of a junkyard for pretty cheap. I think I paid $2,900 for it. And it was cool. It was like this green 71 El Camino, and I wanted to do a 70s like street machine build, a big block with like a tunnel ram or maybe even like a blower through the hood. But I actually know, after talking to you and Brian, I had this idea in mind. I wanted to do a dual quad tunnel ram with nitrous and like big meats out back, skinnies up front, like stink bug stance. I really wanted to do like a 70s era period correct street machine build without a El Camino.
You wanted to harken back to a time before you were born.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to build a car that would be like, people would question like, is that Survivor or did you recently build that? Recently put that together. And I started gathering parts. I had put an SS fiberglass hood on it. Swapped out the grill, put some really cool new old stocks Anson slot mags on there with some big Mickey Thompsons in the back. Speed parts, like just an Edelbrock intake manifold and carburetor setup and some headers, and we were getting there slowly but surely. But it ran really rough. I mean, it needed a lot of work and a lot of love. And this kid, he had hit me up if I wanted to trade for his C10, and it was an 84. And I was like, that's post smog. Like, I don't know if I really want to do that, but it was clean. It was clean. It was already painted. Granted, it was like a Mako paint job, but it was, from 20 feet, looks great. And, I had a 305 that somebody had, thrown like a carburetor and intake manifold on and some headers and stuff. But it had attitude. It had been lowered. It had some like big Mickey Thompsons in the back. And so I saw the potential. I was like, this is a pretty cool little street truck. And I have a soft spot for square bodies. I've owned like 4 of them, and I've never had the means to build one when I owned one, right? And I've always like regretted selling them whenever I do. So I made the trade, and everyone was like, what the hell? Why would you trade that pre-smog El Camino, the killer El Camino, for that thing? And I just was like, you know what? I know what that El Camino is worth. It's probably worth more than this C10, but I love square bodies.
Well, that's the thing. Something's only worth what someone else is willing to pay.
Yeah.
And to you, that was a good trade.
Well, at the time, the El Camino is probably worth more. Now I think they're probably on par with one another. The square body market has just skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And as luck would have it, Greg, you know this, I think it was like a month or maybe just a few weeks after I got the C10, I found a mystery LS engine on Craigslist.
You and your LS deals, man.
Yeah.
You were the LS whisperer, the junkyard LS whisperer.
Yes, dude. This one wasn't actually from a junkyard, although it was like yanked out of someone's house. So this little old lady in Tulare or Delano, California, a few miles north of Bakersfield, my hometown, she posts this post on Craigslist and says, hey, I got these engines in my garage. I just moved into this house. I don't know what they are. I don't know where they came from. Someone come haul them off, $100 a piece. Instantly, I knew that one of them was an LS. I got a hold of this lady like 30 minutes after she made the post. And I said, hey, at this time, I'm down here in San Diego. I said, hey, can I come get this? I can come today. I'll send you the money right now. And she was like, yeah, sure. You're the first person to hit me up, so you got first dibs. So I called like everyone I knew in Bakersfield and was like, can you please go get this engine for me, please? So finally, one of my buddies is like, hey, I can't do it. I'm at work, but I have a friend who lives in Delano, and I think that they can go grab it for you. So they do. So it cost me $100 and a case of beer, right? So I go pick it up like a few weeks later. So now I have the power plant that would go into the C10. Fast forward, and we are where we're at now, right? So the engine's actually sitting in the C10, and we're getting ready to like fire it up here pretty soon. We're in like the final stages. We reached out to our partners at Edelbrock and Comp Cams. They hooked us up with a really cool NSR that's no springs required camshaft, which is like a mild camshaft. I guess you could call it a stage 1.5 maybe cam. Valve springs, really cool shaft rocker system. Basically just redid the whole valve train, pulled the heads apart, pulled the engine apart, and it looked pretty good. So we sent it. I replaced the cam bearings.
Now, real quick, just to clarify, because they actually caught a bunch of flack for that on the first LS versus Coyote.
What's that?
You said they sent you an NSR cam with valve springs.
Yeah. So,
they're stock replacement valve springs, just so everything's on the up and up.
No,
not because you needed them.
No, actually, they're not stock replacement. So when I spoke to them on the phone, I said, hey, I think we might go power adder with this thing in the future. So they gave us LS6 valve springs.
Okay, I mean, that's more or less stock replacement.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like you had to put some super improved, valve spring in it, with a ton more pressure.
all motor for sure. You can get away with running the factory valve springs that were in there. In fact, we had the heads pressure tested and they were good.
Yeah, I still think it would have been a good idea, even if they hadn't sent LS6 springs, just to put new stock valve springs in it.
Right.
Because God knows how they were treated before that.
Yeah, so it was a mystery engine. We don't know what it came out of. I still don't really know. I think it's an OM7, but I'm not sure. So anyways, we replaced the cam bearing, swapped out the cam, changed all the valve train, got that done. And now we've gotten to the point where we stabbed the engine into the truck and we set the Edelbrock ProFlow 4 XT intake manifold on there. So that's like the throttle body style. And it's like a self-learning unit. I talked to my buddy Brian Havens over at LSX Magazine. He's the editor there. And he explained that he did a very similar setup, almost identical setup on his I think this is a 1990 Suburban. And it made like 400 and some odd horsepower just with the exact setup that we're running. So quite an increase. I think it was like 110 or 115 horsepower increase over stock. So that's where we're at with the project. We also did Alden American coilovers on that truck. You guys can go check out the video on my personal YouTube channel or check out the article and the video on Street Muscle Magazine. That was really cool. So we converted the whole truck to, we converted the front suspension on the truck to coilovers. We used Alden shocks in the rear, and we got some more stuff coming on the steering and braking in the future. We also have a Moser rear end coming for that thing. So that's gonna be pretty killer. That's gonna be a 12 bolt. And yeah, man, that project has really just come together very quickly. And I'm super excited because we're coming to the point where I'm gonna get to turn the key.
I'm not gonna lie, that Alden front coilover conversion, that was really trick. I really like the R&D and the development that just went into that. That was such a cool kit.
Yeah. Gary over there and the whole team, they're really sharp. The way that they figured to use the factory spring pocket, and then just like that's the coilover mount now with obviously like pretty stout bracket. It was ingenious. And then also too, like to use Moroso
wheel studs.
Moroso wheel studs to mount the A-arms. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, especially after, seeing some suspension failures of people who think they know what they're doing. They order some stuff off eBay.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's not.
It's easy to look at it and be like, wow, this kit is overbuilt, but it's really, it's really well done. And to your point, there's a number of like eBay, suspension places where you can get tubular control arms for C10s. I don't know if I trust them, man.
All I know is you don't mess around with suspension. I mean, seriously, you don't cut corners there.
Yeah. It handles worlds apart from where it was. And then I think I've talked to one of our sponsors here on the RodCAST, actually, Performance Online, about doing rack and pinion kit on that truck, and then also upgrading with their Blackout Series brakes, and then couple that with the new 12 bolt rear end, some new rear leaf springs. It should be a pretty cool, quote unquote, like pro touring truck. I think we could call it that. You got upgraded steering and suspension, braking, and modern power plant. So, it's not a cantilever rear suspension or anything like that. It's not earth shattering or anything like that. But
it also doesn't cost 25 grand.
Thank you. That's exactly what I said. All told, granted, I got this in a trade, but hey, crazier things have happened. All told, I think we'll be into the truck for like, and this is not like actual cost, because obviously we get things in trade for editorial, like for testing and research and development and stuff. But if you were to come out of pocket, right, somebody wanted to build this truck at home the same exact way that we did, we're well under $15,000, which is pretty crazy. Granted, I got an LS engine for $100, but let's say you went to the junkyard and bought one.
Well, let's be 100% fair here. This is not the first, well, it was the first one, but it is not the only $100 LS engine you've got. And I don't know if you're ready to spill the beans on that. I'm not going to spill it for you. I'm just saying,
let's talk about it, man. It's
finding $100 LS engines is possible. Either that or Vinny is just like super master negotiator over here.
No, dude. I don't know how to explain that one. It was crazy. I really thought like, so after I put together that 5.3, I was like really excited. Like I was on the phone with you, like all those nights, like taking apart the engine, like talking to you, like, okay, well, how can I do this, or what should I do here? And it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun taking that engine apart and putting it back together. And I thought, man, this was really easy. And then when I asked you, I said, hey, you know, if I were to rebuild the bottom end on one of these, do you think I could do it at home in my garage? And he said, yeah, you replace the cam bearings. That's probably the hardest part of, you know, a rebuild. So, so then that boosted my confidence, and I started shopping around for something bigger. I wanted to build something to replace the engine that's in Snake Eyes. And you guys know all about Snake Eyes. If you don't, go check out streetmusclemagazine.com. It's a 72 Monte Carlo, long time project. So I wanted to replace the 383 that was in there with something bigger. And so I started shopping around for a 6.0. And anybody who's in the market for a used LS engine knows that 6.0s demand a premium. I mean, people want a lot of money for them. Best case scenario, you know, if you find one that's, I mean, okay, so out here in California, the cheapest one that I found that was like just a block, you know, none of the rotating assembly was usable, nothing, no heads, anything, like $900, just a block. So what was it, last week, Greg? Yeah, last week. I was on Facebook Marketplace, and a guy down in San Diego, 40 minutes away from my house, posts a 6.0 for $150. And I was like, this gotta be fake or something. So I message him. I say, hey, you know, can I come take a look at this? He's like, yeah. Oh, how, you know, when do you want to come by? And I was like, I'll come by right now. This was in the middle of the day. So I knew, you know, situations like that, you gotta be Johnny on the spot. So I cruised down there, sure enough, pick up the thing for $150, and halfway expecting like, it's going to be junk on the inside. You know, I'll take the heads off and it'll be trash. But after talking to you, Greg, you were like, well, hey, you can sell the cylinder heads and make your money back. So
that was a gamble that even if you couldn't have made your money back, it was worth rolling the dice.
For sure. So I get the thing home. I had to wait a couple of days because obviously I was busy with work. But that weekend, my girlfriend and she helped me tear that thing down. And as I started tearing it down, I was looking at the cylinder head bolts, and dude, this thing was caked in grease and grime and dirt. It was way dirtier than the last one. And I was looking at the cylinder head bolts, and I was like, these things have never been taken off. I don't think these guys knew, like, I honestly think that they were being honest when they told me, we don't know what's wrong with it. The customer brought it in. We yanked the engine, replaced it, and it's been sitting here. So I was thinking, you know, in the back of my mind, like, maybe they do know that something's wrong with this, and they're just trying to, you know, get some money. But then when I started removing those, I was like, I don't think this thing's ever been apart. So lo and behold, we get these cylinder heads off. And granted, they were, I mean, the valves were burnt. But the cylinder walls were good. None of the pistons were exploded or in pieces. None of the rings appeared to be like broken. You know, all the cylinder walls look nice and smooth. But then we get to the cam. So we're removing the cam and it won't come out. So the cam bearing from number 2 had seized onto the cam. And so I had to kind of like chisel it off. And I honestly think that that's the reason that the engine was pulled. It had spun a cam bearing, and you know, it was probably making horrible noises. So they had to replace it. So yeah, there you go, Greg. And you're kind of holding my hand through this build.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see this get underway because I think it'll be a fun build.
Well, I told you early on, like, I had a bunch of questions, like, how big can you build a 6.0?
Yeah.
What can you do with these? Because if I'm going to replace what's in Snake Eyes has been a pain, and it has been so much fun and just one of my favorite cars that I own. And I thought, if I'm going to replace that 383 that's in there with anything, it's got to be like full tilt, like all the way. So if I'm going to build this 6.0, how big can we build it? And then you started running the numbers, and we got to talking, and well, I'll let you tell the people.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, well, we can, if we go 4060, the 4125 stroke, you can get a 427 out of it. And that's apparently Vinny's magic number, because that was it.
I just think that that's cool, man. That was like, the 72 was never offered as the super sport model wasn't offered in 1972, only 1970 and 71. So I feel like, the 72 maybe like was owed a big block, sort of, right? And even though the 6.0 is not a big block, you build it into a 427, and the 427 historically was a big block, right? So, or a mid block, depending on which manufacturer. But anyways, I just thought it was cool. And so that's the goal, right? We have to, now that it's torn down to a bare block, got to take it to a machine shop, have it mag tested, have it sonic tested, and really see how far out we can build it. Because worst case scenario, or best worst case scenario, is that we can rebuild it, but we just can't go that big, so we might end up doing, what is it, Greg, like a 407 or a 408?
Well, 408 if there's no overboard at all.
Right.
And I think it goes up to 412, 415, 417, depending on each bore size.
Right.
And then hopefully, knock on wood, cross your fingers, whatever juju you need to do, pray to Jobu. And if you get that reference, rock on.
Yeah.
Yeah. That it'll sonic test good, and we can punch it out to 4060, and because that'll make a nice 427 with the 4125 stroke.
Yeah, man. I know that I haven't seen too many people do that. They're out there. I have seen people do it, but they're few and far between. Like, I can't really find that much information.
Well, they're not Legos. Like, let's be honest. In an engine that is very Lego and very just slap the parts together, this is not.
Yeah.
This requires a lot of like old school building tricks and a lot of effort, because you're gonna have to clearance the crap out of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
To run that much stroke, but it's possible. It's doable. It's not insurmountable. It's just gonna take a little bit of effort and a little bit of work.
Yeah. So everybody at home, don't be sad if we can't do that because of just the limitations of the block that we have. But that is the goal, right? So we just think that would be really cool. It'd be a lot of fun to showcase how you could do it. Obviously, there are easier ways to build these and make probably equal amount of power. But an NA 427 will be really cool. A blown 427 will be really cool. 427 with a little spray would be really cool.
Let's see how thick these walls are going to be before we start talking about increasing cylinder pressure.
Yeah. So, we got to figure those things out. But frankly, I think it's going to be a really fun project if it pans out the way that we think it is. And, luckily I have Greg here to help me, because otherwise I'd probably just do a 6.0 rebuild and, maybe punch it out to like a 4.0, 408. But that's not even, you don't even have to overbore. That's
no, you just add some stroke to it.
Yeah. So that one's really exciting, but that one's going to take some time. We're a ways off on that one. We're still kind of in the game planning stage of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's all we got going on as far as the projects are concerned on Street Muscle. And I'm not sure if you have anything else on Engine Labs right now, Greg.
No, the only thing that I have also actually working with one of our sponsors for the show on Ford Muscle is we're going to start looking at doing some stuff to the black car to get it ready for the engine I'm building for it. Because that T5 is on its last legs.
Did you?
It's led a good life. It's done its job.
So you talked to our friends over at SST, huh?
Not yet, but we're the conversation is in the works.
Okay.
So we gotta fix that. if I had my way, and I'm really hoping I do get my way, but I would love to do a TKX.
Yeah.
I do know that the TKXs are flying off the shelves, and it may be a situation of getting in line, which I'm willing to wait for. I'm not.
Really cool, man. And that, I mean, that small footprint, the fact that, you don't have to mess with your trans tunnel on most applications. Like, I think probably.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've looked at the T5 versus TKX things, and I'm not even sure that I'm going to have to mess with my drive shaft length.
Really?
Now, I don't know if the output shaft is the same as the T5, so I may have to put a new yoke on it. But, because I want to say, I can't remember if it's a 3-inch or a 3.5-inch steel drive shaft in there. It's big. It is fat. But I really don't want to have to take that down to have it shortened. And length, I wouldn't have it lengthened. I'd just buy a new one. But I'm thinking it's going to be a direct replacement. So that's very nice, because that's an added cost I don't need to deal with.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's something that I've been thinking about too, right? So like, if we end up building this monster motor for Snake Eyes, I can't leave the turbo 350 behind that. That would be just why. And they never made, well, okay, that's not true. They made a manual Monte Carlo, right? But they are very, very rare. And so, to find a 4-speed version is like, it's like next to impossible. So I've seen some people do conversions, and we know that our friends over at Silver Sport are like just masters at that. So that might be something that I reach out to them about in the future, because I've seen people like, put rock crushers in those things, but not without a lot of fabrication, right? So they had to take a lot of parts from a Chevelle and make it work and stuff. So I'd be interested to talk to them, because I think that engine with a 6-speed in that car,
56, or I'm sorry, Magnum.
Yeah, that engine with a Magnum in that car would be a recipe for just the most bruiser of a car on the street.
Especially with a 427 LS, you'd be able to really drive in like the lowest, 6th gear option they have, which is what, I think you get it all the way down to 0.5.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, you can make that work with all that torque. So
yeah, man. And that thing just, and it's got an insane suspension and rear end on it. It's got full coilovers all the way around, big wide sticky Falcon tires on it, awesome brakes from CPP, 4 9-inch Outback with some, I think, 355 gears. So it's it's prepped and ready for something like that. And it would be so much fun to put a roll bar in that thing and take it to the track, and really throw that big car around.
Can you imagine the looks you would get in the pits showing up to Willow Springs in that?
Well, so the thing is, those Monte Carlos, so Bobby Allison used to race a 72. It was the Coca-Cola Monte Carlo, and it was a big, big car. But you got to think about all the other cars that were in NASCAR at that time. You had the Torino, you had the Charger, equally big cars, right? So
but you're talking about NASCAR, not a road course.
Well, they still,
don't you dare bring up the NASCAR road course stuff. I don't even want to talk about that here. Like that's not even the discussion we're going to have today.
Different animals, but same kind of family, I guess.
Yeah.
But
seriously, you should show up at a Porsche Club event when you do that.
Just and just hear that thing just roaring. Oh my God. Out to 6,500 RPM, just crazy. That'd be so much fun. So yeah. I think that's possibly in the future down the road. But I think we've talked long enough about our projects that we have going on, Greg. And of course, they're always evolving. We're always picking up new ones, and we have a whole team here at Automedia, and everyone here has projects, and we all collaborate. This conversation is like normal conversation we have with each other. We all have big dreams, and we all have like stuff that we want to do, and we all try to align that with what we think our audience will think is cool. So do us a favor, drop comments in the comment section below and let us know, what you think about our plans for our future projects and our current projects. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. I try very hard not to be the bad idea fairy and just put.
No, you don't try at all. You relish in the.
No, this is me trying not to be the bad idea fairy. Like you don't, I censor myself quite a bit in the crazy ideas I have. Yeah. Because I would feel really bad if I gave somebody a crazy idea and had them go down a rabbit hole and it didn't work because it was insane.
Say, it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, anything's possible.
Yeah, well.
So, I mean, impossible is just a mindset, right?
That's not entirely true because I originally asked if we could punch that 6.0 out to a 454 because I wanted to build an LSX 454 or a poor man's version rather.
Well, I do think actually, I mean, realistically, yeah, it's possible if we did some machine work that nobody in their right mind would do. I mean, I think we could, and
more than an actual LSX 454.
Yeah, realistically, at the end of the day, you would end up with a bill from the machine shop for more than a brand new LSX block.
Yeah,
like with a 4125 bore standard. So why on earth would you do that?
But the 427 is equally cool because it's like, the poor man's LS7 sort of. I know that the geometry and the way that we get there, as you've explained, is a little bit different than the way that GM got there with the LS7. But the displacement, the number of cubes is the same.
Yeah, that 7.0 liter.
Yeah, dude, come on. That car with a 7 liter badge would be awesome.
Or I think it'd be awesome with a more traditional 427 badge.
That's what I was thinking too. And, get the classic version off of like a Corvette or something. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Except I don't know about you, but all the junkyards by me, the emblems, I think they take them off before they ever even hit the yard.
Oh, I'm
like,
sure. Yeah.
You can't find any kind of decent emblem at the junkyard.
Not that I think that there's any actual 427 vets around anywhere or Camaro.
I'm sure, one of the repo places makes them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, without a doubt, be able to get one. But it'd be a Copo Monte Carlo. No, it would be a lot of fun. Fingers crossed for us, everyone, that it works out. Because maybe Greg and I are the only ones who want to see it happen, but we want to see it happen.
I think it'll be cool. And I think I'm going to think positive, and I'm just going to say it will sonic test okay.
I'd be happy if it went smaller, but that's like, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. Greg, I think now is probably a good time for us to sign off and have a word from one of our sponsors. What do you think?
I think you're right.
Cool. Well, before we do let you guys go, I just want to say thank you for tuning in, staying with us, and for our longtime viewers and subscribers, we appreciate you. And for those of you who are new to the channel, thanks for sticking it out with us. Thanks for hanging out with us and listening to our projects and our plans. I also want to thank all of our sponsors. ProCharger, ARP, Performance Online. Man, we have so many of them. I have to pull up our list here. Excuse me. Liquid Moly, Silver Sport Transmissions, Holly Performance, Optima, Performance Distributors, and of course our title sponsor, Lucas Oil. Without them, none of these episodes or shows would be possible. And they're great partners to work with. So go check out their respective websites. And with that, Greg, I guess we'll see him next week at noon Pacific time, as always.